The moment I pulled into my parents' driveway, I knew I had made a terrible decision. Not because of the traffic. Not because Thanksgiving always turned into a competitive sport disguised as a family holiday. But because 3 luxury vehicles were already parked outside, gleaming like trophies in a showroom. My older brother's imported sports car sat proudly beside my sister's brand new executive SUV. Even the youngest sibling had upgraded to something expensive enough to require its own zip code. Meanwhile, I rolled up in the same 10-year-old sedan I'd been driving since college. I hadn't even reached the front door before my father spotted me through the window. "Well, look who finally made it," he announced loudly enough for half the neighborhood to hear. The door swung open. My mother smiled the way people smile when they discover a stain on a white carpet. "There he is," she said. "Our entrepreneur." The word entrepreneur came out sounding suspiciously similar to unemployed. I stepped inside and immediately felt 30 pairs of eyes evaluating my life choices. Thanksgiving at my parents' house wasn't really Thanksgiving. It was the annual performance review. My older brother, the surgeon, was discussing a recent promotion. My sister, the corporate executive, had apparently doubled her division's profits. My younger brother had purchased another rental property. Everyone received applause. Everyone received admiration. Then there was me. The family disappointment. The cautionary tale. The human PowerPoint presentation titled What Not to Do with Your Life. "So," my aunt asked, already grinning, "how's that startup thing going?" The room became suspiciously quiet. I recognized the setup. It happened every year. Someone would ask an innocent question. Everyone would wait for me to answer. Then my parents would explain why my answer was wrong. "It's going well," I said. My father laughed. Actually laughed. That's what he said 3 years ago. A few relatives chuckled. "Remember when he quit that stable job?" my mother asked. "Best health insurance in the country. Retirement plan. Benefits. And traded it for an idea," my brother added. The table erupted with laughter. I smiled politely. Years ago, their comments had bothered me. Now they were background noise. My startup had consumed every waking hour of my life. I'd spent years sleeping in tiny apartments, eating instant noodles, and working weekends while everyone else posted vacation photos online. The funny thing was, nobody at this table actually knew what I did. They never asked. They only assumed. And assumptions were much easier than facts. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. "Still, we're proud of you for trying." The tone suggested he was speaking to a child who had unsuccessfully attempted to tie his shoes. "Thanks. Failure builds character." More laughter. I considered mentioning that failure had also built several successful companies. Instead, I kept my mouth shut. That confused them more than arguing ever did. As guests continued arriving, my mother began assigning seats. The main dining table filled quickly. White tablecloth. Fancy china. Crystal glasses. The VIP section. Then she pointed toward a small folding table in the corner. A children's table. Except there were no children sitting there. "That one should work for you." I stared at it. She smiled sweetly. My father joined in. "Successful people at the main table." Several relatives laughed. One cousin nearly choked trying not to. "Failures don't deserve a seat up here." The comment landed exactly as intended. A public humiliation disguised as a joke. The room waited for my reaction. My siblings smirked. My parents looked satisfied. But instead of arguing, I simply nodded. "That's okay." The response seemed to disappoint everyone. My mother frowned. "You aren't upset?" "No." "Really?" "Not at all." That somehow made them more uncomfortable than any angry response could have. My father narrowed his eyes. "What are you smiling about?" I checked the time on my phone. Because at that exact moment, someone was supposed to arrive. Someone very important. Someone who would make this Thanksgiving unforgettable. A smile crept across my face. "I'm just waiting for my guest." My sister laughed. You brought someone? Yes. What happened? My younger brother asked. Did a dating app finally lower its standards? The room exploded with laughter. I laughed too. That only confused them further. My mother folded her arms. Who is she? You'll see. The answer immediately triggered a wave of speculation. A struggling artist. An influencer. A life coach. A yoga instructor. Apparently, according to my family, every woman I could possibly date was automatically another terrible decision. The jokes continued. The guesses became more ridiculous. I simply sat back and waited. Because outside, a car had just pulled into the driveway. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't wait to see my family's faces when the front door opened. Every conversation in the house stopped. My mother glanced toward the entryway, clearly expecting the arrival of whatever disaster she had already imagined for me. My father smirked. Well, let's meet the latest bad decision. A few relatives laughed. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The front door opened. Then silence spread through the room like someone had hit a mute button. She stepped inside carrying a small pie box and wearing a warm smile. Not flashy. Not attention-seeking. Just effortlessly elegant. The kind of person who immediately made every room feel brighter. For several seconds nobody spoke. My younger brother blinked twice. My sister nearly dropped her wine glass. Even my father looked confused. Apparently their imaginary picture of my girlfriend hadn't included someone who looked like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine. She spotted me and smiled. That smile alone made the miserable evening worth attending. There you are, she said. I walked over. She kissed my cheek. Simple. Natural. Comfortable. The kind of affection that comes from people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. My mother's eyes narrowed. She clearly didn't know what to do with this information. Everyone, I said. This is my girlfriend. She greeted each person politely and handed the pie to my mother. I hope you don't mind. I brought dessert. Oh, my mother said awkwardly. That's nice. Normally she would have found something negative to say immediately. The problem was that she couldn't. Not yet. The family gathered around her like investigators examining a suspiciously perfect alibi. The questioning began almost instantly. So, my aunt asked, what do you do? Here we go. My girlfriend smiled. I work with growing companies. What does that mean? My brother asked. It means I spend a lot of time listening to ambitious people. The answer somehow revealed nothing and everything at once. My father tried next. Are you in sales? A little. Marketing? Sometimes. Consulting? Occasionally. Every answer somehow sounded truthful while revealing absolutely no useful information. It was beautiful. My family hated it. The interrogation continued through appetizers. Then drinks. Then dinner. Every attempt to put her in a neat little category failed spectacularly. Meanwhile, she charmed everyone else. My teenage cousins loved her because she treated them like adults. My grandmother loved her because she actually listened. Even my grumpy uncle found himself laughing at her jokes. At one point she asked my grandfather about a fishing trip he'd taken 20 years earlier. Nobody else even remembered the story. He spent 15 minutes happily telling it. The entire time, my parents watched with growing frustration. Things became even worse for them whenever she and I interacted. We had the annoying habit of actually liking each other. Small smiles. Inside jokes. The occasional glance across the room. Nothing dramatic. Just the comfortable rhythm of two people who enjoyed being together. At one point she reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. A simple gesture. But after years of feeling like the family disappointment, it felt surprisingly powerful. Then my sister leaned toward me. How did you meet her? I smiled. Through work. My sister laughed. That doesn't explain anything. My girlfriend grinned. It explains enough. My sister looked even more suspicious. The evening continued. Yet something strange started happening. Several relatives kept staring at my girlfriend. Not rudely. More like they were trying to solve a puzzle. My uncle finally spoke up. "Have we seen you somewhere before?" She tilted her head. "Maybe. You look familiar." "I get that a lot." My father studied her carefully. "So do I." She simply smiled and took another bite of dinner. That only made everyone more curious. By the time dessert arrived, half the room seemed convinced they recognized her from somewhere. Nobody could figure out where. My mother looked increasingly irritated by the mystery. She had spent years building the narrative that I couldn't make good decisions. Unfortunately for her, my girlfriend wasn't cooperating. She was intelligent, funny, successful looking, kind, and somehow impossible to criticize. For the first time in Thanksgiving history, my parents were losing control of the conversation. And the best part? They still had absolutely no idea who was sitting at their table. Or why, in less than 20 minutes, every assumption they'd made about me was about to collapse in spectacular fashion. Dessert arrived, but nobody seemed particularly interested in eating it. The pumpkin pie sat untouched. The apple pie remained uncut. Even my uncle, a man who treated dessert like a competitive sport, seemed distracted. Everyone's attention kept drifting toward my girlfriend. The mystery was bothering them. People knew they recognized her. They just couldn't place her. My father finally decided to reclaim control of the evening. He leaned back in his chair and took a sip of coffee. "You know," he said loudly, "I've always believed Thanksgiving is about celebrating success. Here we go." Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable looks. My mother immediately joined in. "Absolutely." My father nodded toward my siblings. "We've got a surgeon." My brother smiled. "A successful executive." My sister raised her glass. "A real estate investor." My younger brother grinned. Then my father's eyes landed on me. The grin slowly spread across his face. "And then there's him." A few nervous chuckles escaped around the room. My girlfriend calmly continued eating pie. My father pointed toward the main table. "Like I said earlier, successful people belong here." My mother laughed. The siblings joined in. Then came the line. The line they would regret for the rest of their lives. "Failures don't deserve a seat at the table." Silence followed. Several relatives looked down. Others stared at their plates. Even after all these years, some comments were uncomfortable to hear. I opened my mouth. But before I could say a word, my girlfriend gently set down her fork. Then she smiled. Not an angry smile. Not a defensive smile. The smile of someone watching a movie and already knowing how it ends. "That's an interesting philosophy," she said. My father shrugged. "It works." She nodded thoughtfully. "I suppose it would." The room became quiet. Something in her tone had changed. For the first time all evening, she wasn't dodging questions. She was inviting them. My mother crossed her arms. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" My girlfriend dabbed her napkin. "Only that I've spent most of my career investing in people that others considered failures." My brother frowned. "Investing?" She smiled. "Yes." My sister leaned forward. "What kind of investing?" "Venture capital." The words barely registered. Most relatives simply nodded. My father certainly didn't seem impressed. "That sounds nice." "It has been." Then my uncle suddenly froze. His eyes widened. He stared at her. Then stared again. "No way." The room turned toward him. "No way," he repeated. My girlfriend laughed softly. My uncle pointed across the table. "I know who you are." Now everyone was paying attention. My aunt looked confused. "Who?" My uncle practically choked. "She's one of the biggest venture capital investors in the country." Silence. Complete silence. My sister blinked. My brother stopped chewing. My father's smile disappeared. My mother looked genuinely confused. "What?" My uncle grabbed his phone. Within seconds he pulled up a photo. Then another. Then another. Every picture showed my girlfriend standing beside famous founders, executives, and entrepreneurs. The same face. The same smile. The same woman sitting at our Thanksgiving table. "Oh my God!" my cousin whispered. My sister's jaw dropped. "I've seen her on business magazines." My girlfriend looked embarrassed by the attention. "Please don't make it a thing." Unfortunately, it was already a thing. My father suddenly sat straighter. "You never mentioned that." "No one asked?" The room remained frozen. Then came the second bomb. The one that truly destroyed the evening. My brother looked at me. "Wait." Then looked at her. Then back at me. "How did you two meet?" My girlfriend smiled. "His startup." The room became silent again. My father frowned. "What startup?" I nearly laughed. The fact that he still didn't know was somehow perfect. "The startup you've been making fun of for years," my girlfriend said. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. She continued calmly. "I was one of the first investors." My mother's face lost color. "What?" She nodded. "I believed in him immediately." The room felt frozen. Every relative stared at me. My father laughed nervously. "Well, investing doesn't mean it succeeded." My girlfriend looked at him. Then delivered the final blow. "It succeeded very well." Nobody spoke. She continued. "The company expanded nationally." My sister looked stunned. "It did?" "Yes." My girlfriend nodded. 3 months ago, it was acquired." My uncle nearly dropped his fork. My brother whispered. "Acquired by who?" She casually named one of the largest technology corporations in the country. The room exploded. "What? You're kidding!" "No way!" My father looked like he had forgotten how breathing worked. Then came the number. A number so large that several relatives physically froze. One cousin actually spit coffee onto the tablecloth. My younger brother started doing math on his phone. My sister's eyes widened with every calculation. My mother simply stared at me. Speechless. For years they had called me a failure. For years they had laughed at my choices. For years they had assumed they knew exactly how my story would end. Now nobody touched their dessert. Nobody laughed. Nobody had another joke. And for the first time in my entire life, the loudest people in the room had absolutely nothing to say. The silence lasted nearly 30 seconds. For my family, that was the equivalent of a solar eclipse. Nobody knew how to proceed. My father looked like a man who had spent years studying for the wrong exam. My mother kept opening and closing her mouth without producing actual words. My siblings stared at me as if I had suddenly revealed I was secretly royalty. Then the transformation began. It was honestly impressive. A world record level reversal. My younger brother was first. "Honestly," he said, clearing his throat, "I always knew you'd figure things out." I nearly laughed. Always knew? 3 months earlier he'd called my company an expensive hobby. My sister immediately joined in. "I told everyone you were smart." This from the woman who once suggested I apply for a job answering customer service emails because entrepreneurship was too ambitious. Then my father leaned forward. The same father who had declared failures didn't deserve a seat at the table less than 10 minutes earlier. "Son, we're proud of you." Son. Interesting. Usually I was him. Now I was suddenly son. My girlfriend squeezed my hand beneath the table. She was enjoying this far more than she pretended. My mother smiled nervously. "We were just worried about you." The room became awkward again. Because everyone knew that wasn't true. They hadn't been worried. They'd been judgmental. There was a difference. Then came the truly ridiculous part. The requests. My brother had a business idea he'd love me to hear. My sister wondered if my company still had executive openings. A cousin wanted startup advice. An uncle asked whether I invested in real estate. Another relative casually mentioned a restaurant concept he'd been considering for years. Within 5 minutes, Thanksgiving had transformed into a networking event. I sat quietly while everyone talked. Then I noticed my girlfriend watching me. Not the family. Me. The way she always did. As though none of the money mattered. As though she'd have been sitting beside me even if the company had failed. That realization meant more than any acquisition ever could. Eventually I raised a hand. The room grew quiet. I appreciate the interest. Everyone nodded eagerly. But I'd rather not talk about money. The disappointment was immediate. Several relatives visibly deflated. My father forced a smile. Of course. I leaned back. You know what's funny? Nobody answered. For years everyone assumed success was the point. The room remained silent. It wasn't. My mother looked confused. What do you mean? I glanced around the table. At the expensive cars outside. The promotions. The titles. The trophies everyone spent years chasing. I started that company because I believed in it. I paused. Not because I wanted to impress anybody. Nobody had a response. Then my girlfriend softly spoke. That's true. Every eye turned toward her. She smiled. The reason I invested wasn't the business. The room looked shocked. It wasn't? She shook her head. The business was good. Then she looked at me. But he was better. I felt my face warm. She continued. Every investor I know looks at numbers. The room listened carefully. I looked at character. Silence. He kept going when everyone doubted him. Her eyes never left mine. He kept working when success wasn't guaranteed. My father lowered his gaze. My mother suddenly found her pie fascinating. And he treated people well when he had absolutely nothing to gain. My girlfriend smiled. That's why I invested. The room fell completely quiet. For years I had wanted my family to understand me. Ironically, the person who explained me best wasn't related to me at all. She reached for my hand. I believed in him before the success. Then she laughed softly. And I'd still be with him if he'd made absolutely nothing. For the first time all evening, nobody tried to interrupt. Nobody made jokes. Nobody argued. Because genuine love is surprisingly difficult to mock. After a moment I stood. My girlfriend stood beside me. We should probably head out. Immediately several relatives protested. Already? So soon? Stay longer. I smiled. No, I think we're good. My father looked embarrassed. My mother looked regretful. Neither knew how to undo years of behavior in a single evening. Truthfully, either could. As we gathered our coats, I glanced toward the dining table. Then towards a folding table in the corner. The one reserved for failures. A smile spread across my face. I looked directly at my parents. So, I asked casually, are failures allowed at the main table now? Nobody answered. Not my father. Not my mother. Not my siblings. The silence was immediate. Absolute. Frozen. Then my girlfriend burst out laughing. A genuine, unstoppable laugh. A few cousins joined in. Then my uncle. Then my grandmother. Within seconds half the room was laughing. Everyone except my parents. They simply sat there, speechless. For once, there was nothing left to say. My girlfriend slipped her arm through mine as we walked toward the door. Outside, the cold evening air felt refreshing. Behind us, the house remained full of awkward silence. Ahead of us was something much better. Someone who had believed in me before anyone else did. And as we walked to the car together, smiling and laughing under the Thanksgiving lights, I realized something. The best part of proving everyone wrong wasn't the money. It was discovering who stood beside you before you ever had it.